In 1998, India executed one of the most secretive and impactful military operations in its modern history, catching the entire world, including the most sophisticated intelligence agencies, completely off guard. The event was the Pokhran-II nuclear tests, a series of underground detonations in the Thar Desert of Rajasthan that marked India's decisive entry into the nuclear club. This achievement was not just a technological and scientific feat, but also a masterclass in operational secrecy, strategic deception, and geopolitical calculation. The world was stunned not only by the fact that India had conducted nuclear tests, but also by the way it managed to keep the entire operation hidden until the moment of detonation, despite the watchful eyes of satellites and foreign intelligence operatives. For years, India had maintained a policy of ambiguity regarding its nuclear program, neither confirming nor denying its weapons capability. However, the roots of Pokhran-II went back decades, with India's first nuclear test, codenamed Smiling Buddha, conducted in 1974. After that, international scrutiny intensified, especially from the United States and other major powers, who deployed advanced satellite surveillance to monitor any possible nuclear activity in India. The American spy satellites, equipped with high-resolution imaging, were regularly scanning the Pokhran test range. This meant that any large-scale movement of men, equipment, or material would instantly trigger suspicion. India's scientists, military planners, and political leadership knew they had to outsmart this constant observation. The key to the success of Pokhran-II lay in meticulous planning and the adoption of deceptive strategies to hide preparations in plain sight. The work was carried out by a small, tightly knit team of scientists from the Defense Research and Development Organization, DRDO, and the Bebe Atomic Research Center, BARC, along with a few select members of the Indian Army. All personnel involved were sworn to the highest levels of secrecy, and information was shared strictly on a need-to-know basis. Unlike the 1974 test, this time India made a conscious effort to avoid the mistakes that could reveal its hand early. Equipment and test materials were transported only at night to avoid detection from satellites, and vehicles were camouflaged to blend with the desert surroundings. The test shafts were dug in a staggered manner over months to prevent patterns that could be noticed from above. One of the most brilliant aspects of the operation was the use of human and environmental camouflage. The scientists, to avoid suspicion, often dressed in military uniforms when visiting the test site so that their presence could be mistaken for routine army drills. The digging of shafts and movement of materials were disguised as routine desert exercises. Even the heavy machinery was covered with netting that mimicked the sand's color and texture. Every possible detail, from the timing of construction to the disposal of excavation debris, was calculated to avoid raising alarms. When the day finally came, May 11, 1998, India detonated 3 nuclear devices almost simultaneously, followed by 2 more on May 13. The tests included both fission and thermonuclear designs, showcasing India's advanced nuclear capabilities. The shock in global capitals was immediate and intense. The United States, which had been confident in its ability to monitor India's nuclear ambitions, was caught entirely off guard. CIA analysts later admitted they had no prior intelligence that such a test was imminent. For a nation under constant surveillance, pulling off such an operation without a single major leak was a remarkable achievement. The geopolitical impact was seismic. India's tests broke the international nuclear status quo, forcing the world to acknowledge it as a de facto nuclear weapons state. Sanctions quickly followed from the United States, Japan, and several other countries, aiming to punish India for what they saw as a breach of global non-proliferation norms. Yet, domestically, the tests were celebrated as a moment of national pride and strategic assertion. The Indian government, led by Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, framed the tests as a matter of national security, citing threats from nuclear-armed neighbors and the need for credible deterrence. What made Pokhran II even more significant was its timing. It came at a period when India was emerging economically and technologically, and the tests were a clear signal that it intended to be recognized as a major global power. They also altered the strategic dynamics in South Asia, prompting Pakistan to conduct its own nuclear tests just weeks later, officially turning the region into a nuclear flashpoint. From an intelligence and military perspective, the operation became a case study in how a determined nation could evade even the most sophisticated surveillance systems. The success of Pokhran II wasn't just about detonating a bomb, it was about showing the world that India could plan, coordinate, and execute a high-stakes national security mission under the tightest veil of secrecy. It demonstrated the effectiveness of compartmentalization in information flow, the discipline of involved personnel, and the precision of logistical planning. In the years since, many analysts have pointed to Pokhran II as one of the most impressive examples of military secrecy in modern history. It challenged the assumption that high-tech surveillance always guarantees forewarning and highlighted the limitations of even the most advanced intelligence-gathering methods when confronted with determined and resourceful opponents. For India, it was more than a technological milestone, it was a declaration that the nation could safeguard its strategic interests on its own terms, and that when it chose to act, it could do so in a way that would shock the entire world. The commissioning of INS Aryan marked one of the most significant milestones in India's defense history, representing the culmination of decades of covert research, technological development, and strategic vision. As India's first nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarine (SSBN), Aryan was not just a new addition to the naval fleet, it was the cornerstone of India's nuclear triad, providing the country with a credible and survivable second strike capability. What made the Aryan program so remarkable was not only its technical complexity, but also the extraordinary secrecy that surrounded its conception, construction, and deployment, surprising defense analysts worldwide when it was finally revealed. The origins of Aryan can be traced back to the 1970s and 1980s, when Indian defense planners recognized the limitations of relying solely on land-based missiles and aircraft for nuclear deterrence. Both land and air-based assets are inherently vulnerable to a first strike by an adversary. A nuclear-powered submarine armed with ballistic missiles, on the other hand, can remain hidden underwater for months, making it extremely difficult for enemies to detect and destroy. This survivability is the essence of second strike capability, the assurance that even if an enemy attacks first, a retaliatory nuclear strike can still be launched. India's decision to pursue an SSBN program was a strategic necessity given its regional security environment. With two nuclear-armed neighbors, China and Pakistan, India needed a deterrent force that could operate beyond the reach of hostile surveillance and missile defenses. However, Building such a vessel from scratch was an immense challenge. Nuclear submarines are among the most complex machines ever built, requiring mastery over nuclear propulsion, underwater acoustics, missile integration, and crew training. Few countries in the world had successfully developed them, and none were willing to share the full range of necessary technologies. Despite these challenges, India quietly launched the Advanced Technology Vessel ATV project in the late 1980s, a program so secretive that its details were known to only a handful of top officials. The entire development process was shrouded in confidentiality. The construction took place at the Shipbuilding Center in Visakhapatnam, which was heavily guarded and cordoned off from public view. Foreign intelligence agencies were aware of India's ambitions, but the progress and technical breakthroughs remained hidden for years due to strict operational security. Even many in India's defense establishment were unaware of the extent of the program until the submarine was nearly ready for sea trials. India's Arihant's nuclear propulsion system was one of its most critical and closely guarded aspects. It was powered by an 83 MW pressurized water reactor developed indigenously with assistance from Russia in certain specialized areas. The integration of the reactor into a submarine hull required solving unprecedented engineering challenges, from radiation shielding to noise reduction. The submarine also needed to be quiet enough to avoid detection by enemy sonar, which meant advanced sound dampening techniques and precision manufacturing. Arihant was designed to carry 12 K-15 Sagarika ballistic missiles, each with a range of about 750 kilometers, or 4 longer-range K-4 missiles capable of striking targets up to 3,500 kilometers away. These missiles were developed by India's Defence Research and Development Organization, DRDO, under conditions of high secrecy, tested from submerged platforms before integration into the submarine. The ability to launch nuclear missiles from beneath the ocean's surface was a game-changer for India's strategic deterrence. The submarine was officially launched in 2009, but even then, details about its capabilities were scarce. Sea trials began in 2014, and Arihant was quietly commissioned into service in 2016, without the fanfare that usually accompanies such a major military achievement. This low-key induction was deliberate. India wanted to signal its capability without openly provoking its adversaries or revealing too much operational information. For years after its commissioning, the submarine's exact patrol schedules, operational readiness, and missile loadouts remained classified, further reinforcing the air of mystery around it. The strategic importance of Arihant became clear in 2018 when Prime Minister Narendra Modi publicly announced that the submarine had completed its first deterrence patrol. This meant that for an extended period, Arihant had been at sea, fully armed with nuclear missiles, ready to respond in the event of a nuclear attack. This marked the full operationalization of India's nuclear triad: land-based missiles, aircraft-delivered weapons, and submarine-launched missiles, ensuring a robust and credible deterrent posture. Globally, the Arihant program stunned observers for several reasons. First, India had managed to join an elite group of nations alongside the United States, Russia, China, France, and the United Kingdom that possessed operational SSBNs. Second, it had done so largely through indigenous effort, despite facing decades of technology denial regimes and sanctions. Third, the program had been executed under a level of secrecy that successfully prevented the leak of major details until the submarine was ready, demonstrating India's ability to conduct long-term strategic projects without foreign intelligence agencies gaining full insight. The geopolitical implications were profound. With Ariant, India could maintain a constant nuclear deterrent even if its land-based missiles and air bases were destroyed in a first strike. This stability through deterrence shifted the strategic balance in the Indian Ocean region, complicating the calculations of any adversary contemplating aggression. The submarine's mobility and stealth meant it could operate across vast stretches of ocean, its exact location unknown, making it a persistent strategic threat. Beyond its immediate military role, Arihant symbolized India's emergence as a technologically advanced power capable of developing some of the most sophisticated defense platforms in existence. It sent a message to both allies and adversaries that India's defense capabilities were not to be underestimated, and that it could independently safeguard its national security interests. The Agni-V missile stands as one of India's most significant strategic achievements, a technological marvel that extended the nation's strike capability far beyond its immediate neighborhood and firmly established it among the select group of countries possessing intercontinental ballistic missile (ICBM) technology. Developed under the Integrated Guided Missile Development Program (IGMDP) and produced by the Defense Research and Development Organization (DRDO), Agni-V is not simply an upgrade to earlier missile systems. It is a symbol of India's determination to maintain credible deterrence in an increasingly complex and competitive security environment. Its development, testing, and eventual induction into service were carried out with careful planning and considerable secrecy, revealing capabilities that caught the attention of both friends and adversaries worldwide. Before Agni-V, India's longest-range missile in the Agni series was Agni-3, with a range of about 3,500 kilometers, sufficient to target most parts of Pakistan and parts of China. However, this still left out several key strategic locations deep inside China's territory. For Indian defense planners, this gap in reach meant that India's deterrent capability was incomplete in the context of its primary security concerns. The development of Agni-V addressed this limitation decisively. With a range exceeding 5,000 kilometers and in some versions estimated to be capable of reaching up to 8,000 kilometers, Agni-V placed the entirety of China, as well as parts of Europe and Africa, within striking distance. This extended reach fundamentally changed India's strategic calculus and the way other powers perceived its military potential. Agni-V is a three-stage solid-fueled missile that incorporates advanced composites and lightweight materials to improve efficiency and mobility. One of its standout features is its road mobility. Thanks to the use of a canisterized launch system, the missile can be transported and fired from specially designed vehicles, giving it a high degree of operational flexibility. This mobility ensures that the missile can be moved quickly to different locations, making it much harder for an adversary to track and neutralize before launch. The canisterized design also reduces launch preparation time to just a few minutes, a critical advantage in scenarios where a rapid retaliatory strike is necessary. From a technological perspective, Agni-V also represents a leap in precision and reliability. The missile is equipped with an advanced ring laser gyroscope-based inertial navigation system, supplemented by satellite navigation for enhanced accuracy. This means that not only can Agni-V reach distant targets, but it can do so with a high level of precision, increasing its effectiveness as a deterrent. Additionally, the missile has been designed with the capability to carry multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicles, IndiaVs in future versions, allowing it to strike several targets with a single launch, a feature that could dramatically enhance India's strategic leverage. The secrecy surrounding Agni-V's development was deliberate and carefully maintained. The project began in the early 2000s, but information released to the public was limited, and even the first test in April 2012 came as a surprise to many outside observers. The launch from Wheeler Island off the Odisha coast was a complete success, with the missile reaching its intended range and demonstrating all planned capabilities. Internationally, the test drew immediate attention and mixed reactions. For India's allies and strategic partners, it was proof of technological sophistication and self-reliance. For rivals, it was a reminder of India's growing reach and determination to protect its interests. Subsequent tests in 2013, 2015, 2016, and later years further validated the missile's reliability. Each test was monitored closely by foreign intelligence agencies, yet India maintained a policy of quiet confidence, avoiding unnecessary provocation, while making it clear that Agni-V was intended solely for defensive deterrence. The missile was formally inducted into the Strategic Forces Command, giving India a powerful new tool to ensure its national security against distant threats. The geopolitical implications of Agni-V's induction were substantial. For China, it meant that its major cities and strategic assets, including those far inland, were now within India's strike envelope. This altered the strategic balance in Asia, as China could no longer assume that only its coastal regions were vulnerable. For Pakistan, while Agni-V's range far exceeded what was necessary to target it, the missile symbolized India's broader strategic orientation and its ambition to be counted among global powers with long-range strike capabilities. The missile also had an indirect effect on India's relations with other countries. Nations in the Asia-Pacific and beyond began to take India's strategic reach more seriously, factoring it into their security and diplomatic calculations. Another notable aspect of Agni-V is its role in signaling technological maturity. Developing an ICBM is not just about range. It requires mastery over propulsion, materials, science, guidance systems, re-entry vehicle design, and miniaturization of warheads. Each of these areas presents immense challenges, and India's success with Agni-V demonstrated that it had overcome them largely through indigenous effort, despite decades of international technology denial regimes and restrictions. This achievement enhanced India's reputation as a nation capable of advanced research and development in sensitive strategic technologies. While Agni-V has been publicly acknowledged, many aspects of its full capability remain classified. Analysts believe that future upgrades could include MIR-V technology, advanced decoys to defeat missile defense systems, and extended-range versions. The missile's operational deployment locations, patrol routes of its mobile launchers, and readiness levels are kept secret for strategic reasons. This controlled release of information adds to the deterrent value. Adversaries know the capability exists, but cannot be sure where or when it might be deployed. Ultimately, Agni-V is more than just a missile. It is a strategic statement. It signals that India has both the intent and the capability to protect its sovereignty and interests over vast distances, and that it can do so independently. The missile's unveiling and induction stunned the world not because India was expected to remain static in its capabilities, but because it demonstrated such advanced reach and readiness at a time when global power dynamics were shifting rapidly. It underscored India's position as not merely a regional power, but as a nation with a credible global strike capability, one that must be taken seriously in any strategic equation. In November 1988, India executed one of the most rapid and decisive military operations in its modern history, an event that not only stunned the world, but also cemented India's reputation as a capable regional power with the will and means to project force beyond its borders. This was Operation Cactus, a lightning-speed military intervention in the Maldives that showcased India's ability to respond to an unfolding crisis with precision, coordination, and overwhelming effectiveness. The operation was remarkable not only for its swiftness but also for the complexity of its execution, deployed over vast distances with minimal preparation time, while operating in a politically sensitive and diplomatically delicate environment. The backdrop to the operation was a coup attempt in the Maldives, a small island nation in the Indian Ocean that has long held strategic significance due to its location astride vital shipping lanes. On the morning of November 3, 1988, a group of armed mercenaries, reportedly from the People's Liberation Organization of Tamil Eelam Plot, stormed the capital Mali in an attempt to overthrow President Maumoon Abdul Gayoom. The attackers quickly seized key government buildings and tried to capture the president himself. Gayoom, however, managed to escape and sent an urgent appeal for military assistance to India, the nearest large country and the Maldives' most important regional partner. For Indian Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, the decision to respond was immediate. The request posed not just a question of rescuing an allied government, but also of safeguarding India's strategic interests in the Indian Ocean, where external forces, possibly backed by hostile states, could gain a foothold if the coup succeeded. The urgency was compounded by the fact that the mercenaries were attempting to take control of Mali's airport and port facilities, which would allow them to consolidate power and potentially receive reinforcements. Within hours of receiving the request, India activated its crisis response machinery. The Indian Army's elite 50th Independent Parachute Brigade, along with troops from the 6th Battalion of the Parachute Regiment, was put on standby. The operation required rapid airlift over a distance of more than 2,000 kilometers, a significant logistical challenge given that the troops had to be inserted directly into a hostile environment without prior reconnaissance or local staging bases. The Indian Air Force mobilized Ilyushin Il-76 heavy-lift transport aircraft from Agra, loading them with troops, weapons, ammunition, and essential equipment. By the evening of the same day, the first aircraft were airborne, heading towards Mali's Hulhulé Island Airport. The decision to execute an immediate airborne landing without waiting for a full buildup of forces was a calculated risk. Speed was essential. Any delay would give the mercenaries more time to fortify positions, harm civilians, or escape. The plan was to land directly at the airport, secure it, and then move into the city to rescue the president and restore order. The execution was a masterclass in precision timing. The first aircraft touched down at Hulhulé late on November 3, Despite uncertainty over whether the runway was under hostile control, the paratroopers disembarked quickly and established a secure perimeter. Once the airport was secured, additional waves of troops arrived, and the operation moved swiftly into the city. The mercenaries, realizing they were outmatched, attempted to flee in a hijacked merchant vessel, taking hostages with them. Indian naval ships, which had been dispatched at top speed, intercepted the fleeing vessel days later near Sri Lanka, freeing the hostages and capturing many of the attackers. By the morning of November 4th, less than 24 hours after the first distress call, the legitimate Maldivian government was back in full control of the capital. The entire coup attempt had been decisively crushed with minimal casualties, and not a single Indian soldier was lost in combat. The speed of the response, from receiving the SOS to neutralizing the threat, left foreign observers astonished. Intelligence agencies and military analysts noted that such an operation, executed over long distances without pre-positioned forces, would have been challenging for even the most advanced militaries. Operation Cactus had significant geopolitical implications. It sent a clear signal to the region that India was both willing and able to act swiftly in defense of friendly governments and its own strategic interests. It also demonstrated India's capacity for rapid force projection, an important deterrent against external interference in its neighborhood. For smaller nations in the Indian Ocean region, the operation reinforced the idea that India could be a dependable security partner in times of crisis. International reactions were largely positive. Even Western powers, often wary of India's independent foreign policy stance, acknowledged the professionalism and effectiveness of the operation. Then, U.S. President Ronald Reagan commended India's role in restoring stability in the Maldives, and the intervention was viewed as a legitimate and proportionate response to a direct request for assistance. For the Maldives, India's intervention likely prevented a prolonged period of instability and potential civil conflict. From a military perspective, Operation Cactus became a case study in joint operations and rapid deployment under time-critical conditions. It required seamless coordination between the Indian Army, Air Force, and Navy, with each service playing a vital role. The Army provided the ground combat capability, the Air Force executed long-range strategic airlift under uncertain conditions, and the Navy ensured that fleeing insurgents could not regroup or escape. The operation highlighted the value of readiness, flexible planning, and the ability to make high-stakes decisions with incomplete information. In the years that followed, Operation Cactus was frequently cited in Indian defense circles as proof of the armed forces' capability to protect national and regional interests beyond India's borders. It also reinforced the political doctrine that India would not tolerate destabilization in its immediate neighborhood, particularly if it involved external mercenaries or state-backed actors. More than 3 decades later, the operation remains a point of pride in India's military history. It was a demonstration not just of raw capability, but of strategic foresight, rapid mobilization, and the confidence to execute a high-risk mission in defense of a neighboring country's sovereignty. For the world, it was a reminder that India's armed forces, though often seen as defensive in posture, could move with astonishing speed and effectiveness when the situation demanded. The name Operation Cactus may sound benign, but in November 1988, it was the sharp, swift strike that preserved stability in the heart of the Indian Ocean and stunned the global security community. The BrahMos missile program is one of the most striking examples of India's ability to combine indigenous ingenuity with international collaboration to produce a weapon system that commands global attention. Recognized as the world's fastest operational supersonic cruise missile, BrahMos has redefined India's strike capabilities on land, at sea, and in the air. Its speed, accuracy, versatility, and difficulty to intercept have made it a game-changer in modern warfare, while its development and deployment have impressed even technologically advanced militaries around the world. What makes BrahMos especially remarkable is the way it integrates cutting-edge technology with strategic thinking, delivering a weapon that is not just powerful, but also tactically flexible across multiple theaters of conflict. The origins of the BrahMos program lie in the late 1990s, when India and Russia decided to collaborate on developing a new class of missile that could travel faster than existing cruise missiles while maintaining precision and reliability. The name BrahMos itself is a blend of two rivers, the Brahmaputra in India and the Moskva in Russia, symbolizing the partnership between the two nations. The joint venture, BrahMos Aerospace, combined Russian expertise in missile propulsion with India's growing strength in guidance systems, materials science, and platform integration. The goal was ambitious: to create a supersonic cruise missile that could be launched from land, ships, submarines, and aircraft, and that could strike with lethal accuracy before an adversary had time to react. From the outset, the design parameters were aggressive. The missile had to achieve speeds of Mach 2.8 to Mach 3, nearly 3 times the speed of sound, making it far faster than subsonic cruise missiles like the American Tomahawk. At these speeds, the reaction time for any air defense system is drastically reduced, making interception extremely difficult. The missile's range was initially capped at 290 kilometers due to restrictions under the Missile Technology Control Regime (MTCR), but after India joined the MTCR in 2016, this range was extended to over 400 kilometers, with future versions expected to exceed 800 kilometers. Technically, BrahMos is a two-stage missile. The first stage is a solid fuel booster that accelerates the missile to supersonic speeds, after which the second stage, a liquid-fueled ramjet, takes over to maintain high velocity throughout its flight. The ramjet engine enables the missile to sustain supersonic speed from launch to impact, unlike ballistic missiles, which achieve high speeds only during certain phases of flight. The missile's guidance system combines an inertial navigation system with GPS and GLONASS satellite guidance, ensuring exceptional accuracy. Reports suggest a circular error probable CEP of just 1 meter, meaning BrahMos can hit within a meter of its intended target even at maximum range. One of BrahMos' most impressive features is its versatility. The missile can be launched from mobile land-based launchers, surface ships, submarines, and aircraft. The Indian Navy was the first to induct BrahMos in its surface fleet, equipping frontline warships with vertical launch systems capable of firing salvos at enemy vessels or land targets. The Indian Army deploys the missile in road mobile batteries, giving it the ability to strike deep into hostile territory with minimal warning. The Indian Air Force, after significant modifications, integrated BrahMos into its Su-30 Mki fighter jets, turning them into high-speed, long-range strike platforms capable of hitting high-value targets far from Indian airspace. The missile's versatility extends to its flight profile. BrahMos can be programmed for high-altitude or low-altitude flight, and it is capable of sea skimming at just a few meters above the surface, making it extremely difficult for radar to detect. It can also perform sharp terminal maneuvers to evade interception, increasing its survivability against modern air defense systems. These capabilities give BrahMos both strategic and tactical utility, whether it's neutralizing enemy air defense sites, taking out warships, or striking fortified land installations. The missile delivers devastating results with little warning. Operationally, BrahMos has altered the regional security equation. Its speed and precision mean that in the event of a conflict, India could deliver crippling blows to critical enemy infrastructure, command centers, and naval assets within minutes of launch. This rapid strike capability significantly raises the stakes for any potential adversary contemplating aggression. In the naval domain, BrahMos gives India the ability to dominate vast stretches of the Indian Ocean, projecting power and protecting maritime trade routes that are vital to the nation's economy. Internationally, BrahMos has attracted interest from several countries, with the Philippines becoming the first export customer. For the Philippines, acquiring BrahMos was seen as a way to enhance coastal defense and deter potential maritime threats in contested waters. Other nations have expressed interest as well, indicating that BrahMos is not just a strategic asset for India, but also a valuable diplomatic tool that strengthens defense partnerships. The development of BrahMos also sent a message about India's growing technological self-reliance. While the project benefited from Russian collaboration, India contributed substantially to its guidance systems, fire control, and platform integration. Over time, the indigenous content in the missile has increased, reflecting India's ability to absorb advanced technology and adapt it for its own needs. The planned BrahMos 2, a hypersonic version expected to exceed Mach 5, is already under development and could push India even further ahead in missile technology. What truly stunned the world about BrahMos was not just its raw performance, but the speed at which India operationalized it across multiple branches of the military. Within a relatively short period, the missile went from prototype to being fully integrated into land, sea, and air forces, with all three services conducting successful live-fire tests. This rapid induction demonstrated not only technical capability, but also the organizational and logistical efficiency required to deploy such a complex weapon system at scale. In military terms, BrahMos is both a sword and a shield, an offensive weapon that deters through its ability to strike swiftly and decisively, and a defensive asset that can neutralize threats before they materialize. Its mere presence in India's arsenal forces adversaries to factor in the risk of rapid, high-precision retaliation, thereby raising the threshold for conflict. The missile's success has elevated India's standing in the global arms market and reaffirmed its position as a nation capable of developing and deploying advanced strategic weapons that can compete with the best in the world.